C6 can be
Wow.
captured. Oh, and
Wow.
he missed it.
I absolutely love this game. It opens really classically with this Queen's Gambit and a Nimzo Indian on the board with Bishop b4. You've got Magnus Carlsen playing with white here, world number 1 for over a decade against Fabiano Caruana, world number 2 for many of those years. It's Speed Chess 2022, the online chess.com championship, a cracker of a match, and you've never seen domination like this in your life. More on that later. So Magnus goes queen c2 here. This is the classical variation. We get castles, pawn a3. Magnus desperate to pick up the bishop pair, which he does, but he's lost a lot of time. Black already castled, striking back at the centre. We get c takes on d5. You can recapture on d5, but knight e4 flicked in. Tricky line. The queen retreats, pawn recaptures, bishop f4, then preparing to go e3, get the bad bishop outside of the pawn chain, and now with this pressure here, you can go c6, but it's a bit passive. Knight c6, the more active move. Immediately pressuring the centre, e3 covers, and now I'm drawing the aggressive ideas for black on the board. Fabi preparing to push P on the king side, right? He starts with rook e8. Castle's queen side an option for white. Very rich and aggressive position. But knight f3 selected by Magnus, the more pedestrian move, and now vamos. Here comes Gary the g-pawn. The bishop drops back and h5. Fabi doesn't give a damn about his king safety. He wants to munch on this bishop here, and how many of us are going h3 or h4? The bishop's about to get trapped. Well, not Magnus. He goes bishop d3. Just calm development. Fabi goes h4. Isn't that bishop just getting trapped now with pawn f6? Well, it's not played. Fabi, in an homage to Ben Feingold, doesn't push that pawn, never play it. Now, what's the actual problem here? Well, Magnus could take on e4. This is the tricky point. If you capture and execute your threat, well, the bishop jumps away with check, the queen invades, the knight's hopping, it's great for white. But what if you take here, hitting two pieces at once? Well, then white takes with the queen, pawn captures, and this is the point. You check, king f8 best to actually guard the rook here, and after d5, it then means you can capture this pawn with the queen. But the rook can now join an attack here. These are the kind of lines that ensue. First, though, you go with the knight. You threaten some nasty stuff around here in these checks. Rook e7, the best defense. And now you can bring the rook. You can start throwing in checks. It's a drawn line, apparently. But you're not actually winning a piece with f6. These are the points in the variations just shown. So bishop f5 played by Fabi instead. Now h3 gives the bishop some retreat room. We get knight takes on e5 and knight takes playable. But Magnus goes with the pawn here, and Fabi should play pawn c5. It can immediately be done because it's supported by the knight. If then you capture here, there's pawn recapture, not bishop, kick the knight, so there's no time for the queen to take. But it was missed. Fabi starts with queen e7, slightly slower. Magnus plays b4, not allowing the quick c5 anymore. We get rook ac8, castles, bishop g6, rook ac1, and now you'd love to go b6 and c5 in one go, but if b6 first, then this queen comes and sits on c6. So that's why Fabi starts with c6, and now look at this rook on f1 here. Magnus getting into Fabi's head, slides it across to e1, the mysterious rook move. A great way to unnerve your opponent, right? Who knows what that's all about? Fabi carries on with b6, and now this is just awesome from Carlsen. Look at the weakness of that last move. The pawn on c6, ever so slightly tender now, but how do you take advantage of it? You know, what would you play here if you had white? The knight's nicely placed. It's protecting e5, looking at d4, looking at g5. These look nicely placed. The rooks are okay. Maybe you slide this one across, but c5's coming, right? So what does Magnus do? Has a little think, but not a major one, and comes up with knight h2. How much did he use there? About 20 seconds. Now this is some deep stuff, because you're hanging a pawn. Fabi shouldn't actually capture it. His best is c5, but he does take up the gauntlet and capture the pawn, but it's not precise. What's the follow-up? Well, f3, knight g3 therefore played. Looks horrible for white, but this is the point. Takes, the queen crashes through, fine, but Fabi just covers. What's the big deal? Well, this is the final sting at the end of the tale.
Pawn on c6 can be captured. Wow. Oh, he missed it.
Magnus the Scorpion taking advantage of that micro weakness of the last move and then playing this entire knight h2, f3 whole plan. It's just phenomenal chess. Now Fabi takes the queens off the board. If he does this, he's just worse after knight g4. White's going to gang up on this one, and the knight's an excellent defender as well as attacker. So we see the ladies leave the board. Rook captures with check. This pawn does drop, but at least Fabi gets d4. Opening lines, no time for captures or your rook drops. So Magnus goes knight g4 to cover e3 some more, and Fabi should just take. Again, we go to the back cave here, analysis mode. You can't capture as you'd like to do, or this is leading to a checkmate wherever you go with the king. Same problems. So after this pawn captures, you'd have to go rook d5 is one top move, looking for this, or rook d3, pressure the pawn. Different game, very, very tense, roughly level. But Fabi goes rook c3, and Magnus just simply ghosts past with his pawn now, pushing his own one down the board. He's got these two connected passers. Fabi goes rook d8 to come behind Deirdre the d-pawn, e5, Eddie cracking on, rook c6, f4 from Magnus. We've got a race, a bit of a time scramble ensuing, d3, f5, d2, but check. A nice swish and sook, kicking the king over to e7 here. Rook g7 check, king d6, rook d1, and after rook c1, knight e3, Magnus is in some trouble here, but Fabi just has what we can only call in the industry as brain fart. It's a real medical condition that affects many chess players, often coincides with a drop in air quality. Always be careful what you eat before a game of chess. You don't want any windiness in the behind when you're trying to concentrate. Now king e5 was played instead of the right move, but this should have been played because after the knight captures, simply knight takes on f5. Fabi forgetting that they can move backwards here. This was a level position, different game. This one, however, played, allowing Magnus this excellent move. If captures, of course, pawns going through. So the rook slides. Again, you should just take here. But this one played. Now the pawn drops and Magnus has got everything because still the knight holds f5. We get king e4, king f2. Now we see takes eventually, but it's too little too late. We get captures here. Rook recaptures, knight takes, king takes, pawn runs, king retreats, rook retreats rather, and rook blocks the file here. Fabiano resigns the game. Devastating stuff from Magnus. Fabi not at the races, and we can see that by the final score of the match. This was just the first game, and it started a domination, the likes of which we've never seen. World number 1 on world number 2. I hope you enjoyed. Smash subscribe if you did, and check out the video on screen for another epic game of chess. See you soon.